Hey, John, welcome.
Hey,
It is Eat, Sleep, Code, the official Telerik podcast. I'm your host, Ed Charbeneau, and John Bristowe, my co host, is here with me today. What have you been up to, John? It's been a little while.
uh, yeah, it's been a while. I think I've been busy with work, as everyone is, and I've been busy watching the latest Rick and Morty, and I've been busy playing ice hockey, and yeah, that's about it.
Do they have ice in Australia, John?
They do, they do. It's a
is it
wonderful
only
invention.
indoors, though?
Yeah, we just discovered it. Actually, it's fantastic.
I just discovered it. No, you guys don't have any outdoor ice. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, that's right. We've got a handful of rinks here, and a bunch of us expats play from time to time.
Cool. Very cool. Yeah, it's like the whole Cool Runnings thing down there, eh?
Yep.
Oh man. No, but you guys have winter down there, and we have summer up here. So it's kind of odd to think about time to time that you're experiencing the opposite weather that we are. So it's like 95 degrees or like 35 C here right now today. So it's quite hot.
Hmm.
So
Well, there you go.
what does an Australian weather consist of? How cold does it actually get?
Well, this morning is probably about 8, 9 degrees, a bit chilly. Down south, where down in Victoria, state of Victoria, where Melbourne is, it can get down to 0. Further south of that, Tasmania, it can drop into the negative digits, and it can snow in New Zealand. It can snow here. We do get snow in parts of Australia. There's a mountainous region that gets snow from time to time during the winter months, obviously, but it does snow quite consistently in New Zealand. Further south you go.
Yeah, it's another obvious but like contextual mind like warp too that your southern states get your colder temperatures, where
Yep.
our southern states get the warmer temperatures.
Yep.
Yeah,
Just think of the world flipped upside down, and from a map perspective, and it's the same concept. So
yeah, yeah. Fun stuff. All right, to the news. We have like scary news for some reason this week. I don't know if it's a theme that we intentionally did, but I didn't. It just so happens to have showed up that way in the list. But this one is a bit comical, I thought, and I figured I'd add it to our list of things to talk about because I don't know, it just had a tech vibe to it. Cop calls for backup. Drone is following her just to find out it's the planet Jupiter.
yeah. So I think recently Jupiter was quite bright because of the full moon and its location relative to the moon. And so this to some people might look like a drone in the sky, but it isn't. There are planets out there that you can see in the night sky. So just be aware of that in case you're on a stakeout or something. I don't know.
So I'm curious as to like the mindset that was happening here with this officer. That maybe she read an article or like saw a show or something about like drones and how invasive they can be into your privacy or something like that. And for some reason, she thought this was a drone following her. So you read through the article. There's some things that are just quite comical about it.
Yeah.
So like it says she attempted to lose the drone on her way through a local shopping center, but failed. So, like, no matter how hard she tried to run, this thing followed her precisely because it just floated in a stationary orbit. So I thought that was pretty funny. And then she also called like her supervisor for backup, and they, until they actually like got together and assessed what was happening, it took them a minute to figure out that it wasn't a drone, but just a bright star in the sky following them around. So I thought this was pretty funny. It's
And I should also clarify that the Jupiter isn't lit up by the moon. I was just saying that it is a full moon relative to its position relative to in the night sky is kind of on the opposite side. It is lit up by the sun, obviously, but it's quite bright this month.
yeah. Yeah, so I've seen some pretty cool shows about like drones and how they can be used for good and bad. And like one of them was like showing like countermeasures that they're trying to put in place. And apparently most drones, if not all of them, it may be a requirement here in the States, I'm not sure, but they have a return to home feature.
Sure.
And these people, I think it was at a university, they were trying to come up with anti-drone like weaponry. So one of the like, I guess, non-lethal in the terms of like destroying the drone was to shoot this antenna in the direction of the drone, and it would just tell it to go home. So it would trigger the return to home function on whatever drone it was. And they were able to do this pretty consistently. I thought it was pretty cool documentary that was done on it. So maybe she saw something like that, or maybe she's just forgot her tinfoil hat for the moment and thought something was chasing her down the street. You know, I have to admit, like being a police officer out at night, you probably get a lot of, you know, feelings that people are watching you, or
Sure.
you know, get that uneasy feeling quite often. So,
Yep.
you know, it's pretty nerve-wracking, I bet. But I thought this one was kind of funny. Apparently she was embarrassed after she called her boss out to check out the night sky. And but I thought it was fun. Good share. So speaking of scary things, I think you posted this one, John. Public CDNs are useless and dangerous.
Yeah. It's a little bit clickbaity, but don't let the title fool you. Public CDNs, relative to October 2020, have largely become somewhat useless, and this is due to a new feature that that was introduced into browsers at that time, notably Chrome, Firefox, Safari, etc. That introduced the concept of cache partitioning, which is basically a feature that separates the cache content between domains. So if you visit foo.com and bar.com and they share a resource which is like jQuery, the library, which is cached, that is no longer the case because of cache partitioning. And this was done for very good reasons. However, what that does is ultimately it renders the benefit of public CDNs as somewhat moot, because the fact that these caches are no longer shared, and so the primary benefit is lost. And as a result, that's the useless part. Dangerous part is the fact that obviously you're hitting a public location that you can't always trust. There are ways in which you can verify whether it's been tampered in transit. There are hash values you can verify that are persistent in the markup, but relatively speaking, you have to be quite certain that these public CDNs haven't been compromised. But effectively what you need to do is start utilizing HTTP2. You need to utilize your own level cache in the front. You can do this through a variety of means. You can front-end a website through a variety of providers that are out there. But essentially, the old way of doing things through public CDNs is over. The free lunch is over, and it's time to consider alternatives.
Yeah, the one big one which they outline here that I've been seeing for quite some time that always gave me the idea that CDNs were on their way out was this tree shaking business.
Yeah.
So it says right here, no tree shaking. And so if you're not familiar with tree shaking, you might be familiar with something called IL trimming. They're both about the same idea. But basically, you have some sort of compiler. In this case, it's going to be, I believe it's Webpack that does this. It scans through your usage of the code base. So you have, Angular or React, for example. It's going to scan through those frameworks and see what features you're using and what APIs you're calling, and then kind of trim out anything that you're not using. .NET does this for Blazor and Xamarin also. So it'll look through, the .NET framework and, see that you're only calling, a couple of link statements. It'll kind of delete everything else out of there and reduce the bundle size down pretty dramatically. Right. So that doesn't work well with CDNs because usually it's like the entire library and all of its functions are there. So you don't call a function that doesn't exist by accident. So you can't really tree shake a CDN, hence the purpose of it. Tree shaking and CDNs just is a mutually exclusive thing. You can't have both. So I saw CDNs writing on the wall when that started happening. So people have been taking the trade-off of possibly caching this similar library throughout multiple websites versus customizing that library and shrinking it down to only what you need to survive, as they say in Spaceballs. Don't know why I decided to throw Spaceballs reference in there, but
That's always a classic reference. It's good.
yeah, I love that one. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you have homework. Go find it. Go watch it. So they go into a little bit about what you should do instead, which it's kind of interesting. This is not one of our talking points here, but they're talking about using services like Cloudflare and Akamai, which Akamai went down last week, and it took like a bunch of stock exchange stuff.
DNS. Yeah, yet again, another DNS issue.
Yeah, it took down a bunch of websites. A lot of them were stock trading, and people were very upset over their trades not executing on time. Rightfully so. There was a bunch of other stuff. I'm trying to remember the other big sites that were affected. A lot of big commercial sites were affected. I think it was like some car manufacturers and things like that. So yeah, there are alternatives, but they are not bulletproof either. So you need to be very careful with these things. Have backups and disaster recovery routines in place so you don't go down for hours at a time if you're, say trading stocks or something like that. That's probably something you want to hedge your bets against. No pun intended.
Now there is one point to make, which is if a service does go down, it is possible that a public CDN can save you. And that's mentioned near the bottom of the article, which is basically if your web server goes down, then using a public CDN as a fallback could potentially save you some headaches there. But the reality is, if you're bundling everything in the front end anyway, it's kind of like a chicken and egg. It's not going to work to begin with. So,
yeah.
So if you can't hit the index page, chances are you're probably hooped. So
yeah. So here's the article. I went ahead and pulled it real quick. So the Akamai outage, it was an error, not a DNS bug, and they have apologized. So for the hundreds of thousands of dollars that you may have missed out on your day trading, they're very sorry, and they apologize with all their heart. So, am I being too mean, John?
No, this happens more often than people think. People run config scripts, and unfortunately, they think everything looks right, and it doesn't. And it can be off by one sort of thing, like the IP address or whatever that is you're punching in. And these bugs suck because they do a lot of cascading failures. So a simple change, but the nature of DNS is the fact that results are cached, and so you can't force updates, obviously. So you have to. The best you can do is update the record and apologize profusely, and then when everyone's cache invalidates and they go to retrieve the new record, it's everything goes back to normal.
So apparently there was a lot of financial services involved in this one.
Sure.
American Airlines was another one. And it says here many more. So when this first happened, like at the very first few minutes of it, since it was all financial services and quote Fox News, like people immediately went to conspiracy theories. They're like, oh, it's happening. Like the stock market is being taken over by the government or something crazy like that.
No.
And like all the tinfoil hats came out, and then like probably 30 minutes later, they're like, oh yeah, by the way, things that are completely unrelated to any of these other industries just went down too. So it's probably something a little, my go-to is the easiest explanation is usually the correct explanation.
Sure. It's
not
Occam's
these,
razor.
rabbit holes that people like to go down. But yeah,
Yep.
it was mildly entertaining to watch some of the tinfoil hats pop out that day.
Okay.
They're just waiting for their day to come. Anyhow, more scary stuff, John. It's like the Friday the 13th episode of Eat Sleep Code, even though it's Monday the 26th. NPM package steals passwords via Chrome account recovery tool. This is another instance, and I'm not saying anything bad about NPM. Any package management system has its leaky spots. It just so happens this one is NPM again. There was a package on NPM that was found to have some malicious code in it that interfaced with some ChromePass extension. So there was like an exploit in ChromePass, and somebody kind of injected some code into an NPM package and pushed it up to NPM. So I don't think there was anybody that was harmed by this, and it was caught. So it looks like there's been some bad packages, more than one.
Okay.
So they've been removed. I think they got them before anybody really got affected by it. But it's just kind of one of those stories that grabs headlines. You kind of want to talk about it, make sure that people are aware like these systems are not infallible, and you need to be on your toes. There's a lot of good like Git tooling now. So Git, I think we talked about this before, John, but Git has the what is that thing called, Dependabot, that will go through your code on GitHub, and it'll tell you like, hey, these packages need to be updated for security reasons. You should probably do that. Even if they're dev dependencies, it goes through there and lets you know, because even something like this on a dev dependency, you could be on your dev machine and it could be, siphoning passwords or something. So even those dev dependencies can be a security risk. It's not all in deployables.
Yeah, it's about a chain of trust, and you got to make sure that the dependencies you rely upon are trustworthy. Fear. So I think that these things definitely need to be. I think there's a variety of ways we can mitigate against this. And app stores have done this very well. But I think that this might be beyond the purview of NPM, now Microsoft. We'll see what happens here. It will be interesting to see if there are any other mitigations we can add. Obviously, digital signing is one. Validation through a human intermediary is two. There's lots of ways you can try and mitigate against this. Yeah. But you don't want to slow down.
Has some protections on reserved namespaces, so you can't throw a package up there with a similar namespace and kind of hijack people's like if you had a private repo with foo.NuGet package, you can't upload one to NuGet that will resolve before that. So you can actually like reserve namespaces up there. So you'll find things like Blazor dot whatever is reserved. You can't upload your own Blazor dot package. Same goes for things like Progress, like with our stuff. So you can, we've reserved like Telerik and Progress. You can't push stuff up there and try to, get our customers by putting something that resolves over in favor of our libraries and try to hijack things that way. So there's some like things in place for that type of thing. As far as like getting malicious code into libraries, I think it comes down to rather library authors for one, like try to not, review pull requests and don't put like random code into your projects that are going up on these things. So there's a little responsibility there. And then, you're able to scan with like Dependabot and things to find the outliers too.
Yeah, it's not an easy problem, but can be fixed.
Yep. Whenever something is not yours, it kind of goes back to the old security rule of don't trust the client. And in this case, the client is, external source code that you didn't write. You can't really just blatantly trust third-party code unless it's coming from, some type of author that has some stake in it. And you probably don't want to put just random NuGet or NPM packages or NuGet packages or gems or whatever you find on the interwebs into production if they don't have something backing them, like a solid community or it's a paid product or those type of things. All right. SQLite 35% faster than the file system.
This one came out in 2017, but I thought it was an interesting one. This actually brought up an interesting debate on Hacker News, and so I thought I'd include it here in case anyone missed it a couple of years ago. So SQLite, obviously, very fast, very performant database, utilized heavily for both in-app storage as well as other means. And the reality is that, it's not necessarily the case that it's 35% faster, but it does differ based on the OS. So file systems vary greatly. And I don't know if people know this, but there are a wide variety of file system subsystems out there. So Windows has NTFS. There's various subsystems on macOS and Linux distros, and so they can vary greatly in terms of their performance. So the file system on Windows is especially Windows 10 is quite slow, and there are a variety of reasons for that. The file system itself, file systems are not easy, by the way. They're very complicated. And even macOS suffers from being a little bit slower than this. But the reality is that, this is for small reads and writes, not for large reads and writes. But I thought it just raises the discussion point around why database reads and writes are so important. They can have an effect on your app's performance. SQLite is obviously not a cure-all, but it does have some good performance heuristics, and it does raise the interesting discussion around what is a file system, how do they work, why should I care, etc., etc. So it's just one of those things where it's kind of like it's not really that important, but it actually raises an interesting discussion around what file systems are, what database systems are, how they perform their execution, how they perform their operations and whatnot. And I think a lot of people tend to overlook that a lot of the time. As long as it gets in there somehow, I don't care. That's all I care about, is that it gets persisted.
So what you're trying to say is we should just use SQLite for our file system and do away with file systems.
Sure, if you want, perfect.
No, that kind of goes back to that's kind of a date myself old man joke. Do you remember Longhorn?
Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
John's
you know what
like,
age you
so
are.
I know I'm old. I remember Longhorn. So if you don't remember Longhorn, Windows was going to try to go to like a database style file system with this version of Windows codenamed Longhorn, which Longhorn as a whole did not ever ship. That never happened. It was like one of those lost versions of Windows. They ended up gutting it and taking what they could of it and reusing it. And I don't remember the full reasoning for all of the reasons that Longhorn never came to be. I just know I think it was probably too many breaking changes. Having a brand new file system wasn't going to be backwards compatible, that type of stuff. So we never quite saw what we were promised, but a few of us still remember the scars from that.
Yeah, the history of Longhorn is varied. This dates back to, I think, 2006, and it was a very ambitious upgrade to Windows. And from my recollection is that Longhorn made changes across the board, and they were introducing too much too soon. They're not too soon, but rather too much at once. And that's part of the reason why I think it got stripped back. I don't think Longhorn as a whole was a failure. I think you saw parts of it being introduced in Windows 7. Certainly saw some improvements there. Windows 7 was a massive upgrade to Windows XP. And I think before that it was Vista was really the love child of Longhorn and project planning. But Vista did introduce some new capabilities that were missing in XP, and then 7 improved on those. And I think that in terms of the file system, you're right. Longhorn did introduce a new file system. I think WinFS was the code name for that, if I remember correctly. This is a long time ago. And they were introducing a new schema definition for object types, etc. And they were almost moving to an object-oriented model for the database, and that anything that you interacted with, whether it's a file or anything other, like a contact or a mail message, they were all persisted in this sort of unified storage called WinFS, and it never came to fruition, unfortunately. I think it would have been a good idea for that to occur. This idea that you could index your entire operating system independent of whatever type is being persisted, but it didn't happen. So we're still stuck with NTFS.
It was a bit too much for people to wrap their heads around, and when you've got That's the benefit of being nimble and small. Like the Apple folks, they've got a little bit of a privilege there where they don't have so much market share. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean it in a positive way in this situation, where back then with the era you're talking about, like Windows was like 95% of like all users, right? So you've got to support all of these massive corporations, and you're going to throw like this huge breaking change at them, your adoption's going to take a dive. Whereas Mac, they're only dealing with 5% of that population, so they can take some pretty quick left turns and break things and not have to worry about leaving too many people behind. I think that had a lot to do with it.
There's a great Wikipedia article called The Development of Windows Vista, which actually goes into the history. I got the date wrong, which was 2004, actually. I was pretty close, though. But, yeah, it goes into the whole history around that. And so it does talk about what's called the Great Reset, I guess, the development reset. Interesting in terms of kind of what happened. I think it was the right decision at the time, obviously. It is what it is, I guess. And, we didn't suffer too greatly for it.
Speaking of good ideas gone bad, no, that's probably a really loaded segue there. So this thing came out, and I'm always skeptical of new consoles, and I love Steam and the Valve company. They come out with some really amazing games. They have a really like forward-thinking platform of like digital downloads and stuff long before all of the consoles tried to do the digital download thing. Steam has been on top of it for years, but they keep trying to make hardware, and this is not their strong suit. They have the Steam controller, which is I've never seen one in person. I don't think I will ever see one in person. They have the Valve Index, which is an overpriced, beautiful piece of VR headset that I don't think I'll ever see one of those in real life. And now they've got a handheld gaming console that is targeting PC games. And I'm struggling with all of my gaming heart to figure out where the heck this thing fits in any ecosystem I'm in.
Okay.
It's a beautiful thing, but PC games to me, maybe I'm not the persona for this, but they've always been mouse keyboard driven,
sure,
first person shooter heavy. I realize there's a lot more on the platform these days, but I just don't know where what I would do with this thing.
Yeah,
it's basically a handheld PC with the controller attached, like a Switch, like a Nintendo Switch is, that only plays Steam games that are compiled to run on this platform.
Yeah, it makes sense from their perspective. I mean, if you're Valve, you're thinking, we're now providing a lock-in, essentially. So from a business perspective, it makes sense to offer something like this where you can get your users kind of committed to a platform end to end, meaning not only from the store but also from the device that's being used. I think this is the last mile for Valve, and this is where they want to go relative to their customer base. As far as the hardware is concerned, I mean, sure, I would assume they've got it right. They wouldn't introduce something like this unless they felt like it was providing a good enough experience, a compelling enough experience for users wanting to use this. And I think that if that's the case, then maybe it is worthwhile. The things that I would be concerned about would be obviously the performance would be first. That would be first and foremost on my mind. Does this load games quickly? Can I use it in terms of a console for my favorite games? Certainly there will be some games that don't make sense. I think there's a perfect example on your display right now that shows this. There are certain types of games that lend themselves better to a PC experience. What will be interesting to see is if Valve actually takes that experience and actually can move it to a mini experience, so you can switch, so that let's say you're playing a long-standing game I can't think of any because I don't play anymore. But I remember back in the day, you play games that you were committed to for months and months. If you can take that experience and transfer it over to a mini version of that so you can keep your armies updated or whatever it is you're doing, that might be interesting. There are some interesting scenarios that they do outline on their page, like as far as its use as an accessory. They showed it as kind of like a mini stream deck, being able to facilitate it being used in a multiplayer environment. Obviously, if you're a parent, throwing one behind your shoulder as a parent and giving it to your kids to shut them up, that always helps. Using it as an extension for your TV, that's a great scenario as well. So there are some capabilities I can see why they'd want to do this. Ultimately, though, I think if you have a PC, you're probably going to gravitate there. But this is definitely good for an on-the-go sort of experience.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting. Again, seeing these things come and go leaves me very skeptical. There's like gimmicky things like the gyro, like using that to aim in a third-person shooter is not a good experience for anybody. It's gimmicky. Yeah, sure, it's cool the first time you do it, but it's not practical for any type of real play. It looks like nice hardware. Then you get into the reality of it, and you read something like this: the onboard 40-watt battery, yada yada yada, great for 2D games, lasts probably 7 or 8 hours. But then they show all these first-person shooters that are 3D games, and they don't say how long that actually lasts. Like, so an hour?
That's fair.
Maybe. So,
Yeah.
It's also running the Steam OS, which is a fork of Linux. So all the games that are available on this are only Linux-based games.
Well, they did announce that they're actually upgrading Steam to bring all their library to Linux as well. So that was an announcement I saw.
I don't know how that could be a Steam thing, because there's a lot of games that rely on DirectX, and that's a Windows-only thing.
There's probably a bunch of intermediary libraries. Yeah, I think there's probably a lot of libraries they're introducing. But I seem to remember reading somewhere that Steam was announcing that they're bringing a lot of stuff to Linux. Something to that note. I mean, I glanced at it because I'm not into gaming, but that was something that caught my attention.
Yeah, there would have to be somebody compiling some of these things to be on the new platform, as far as I'm aware. But I wish them well. I just can't see myself using it. I'm trying to figure out, like, if I were a parent at the store, unless maybe I'm looking at this from wrong perspective. Maybe I'm at the store. I'm not the parent in this scenario, but I'm the gamer. Why would I choose this over like a Nintendo Switch that's more geared for this out of the, from day one, rather than like bolting an experience onto PC games that already existed with different hardware? Time will tell, but the usual scenario for this is not going to play out well. So we will see. Their Valve Index, their VR headset, struggling. Again, like, I've never seen the controllers anywhere. Like, this is the only implementation of the controllers I've seen anywhere outside of just the controllers being for sale and never seeing one in person.
Yeah.
Like, they had
a lot of inputs. I was just looking at the picture there. Like, there's a lot of buttons.
I have watched people play some games that are designed for like mouse and keyboard, like first-person shooters on joysticks, like the Xbox controller, and watching the contortions their hands go through not only looks painful and uncomfortable, but it's also surprising they're able to pull off what they're able to pull off. There's more buttons than there are fingers on your hand. So we go back a couple weeks to a story we had about the add-on appendages for your fingers.
Yeah, this would be a good case study for this case for this.
Yeah, that would be useful. But anyhow, again, I wish it well, but I'm really skeptical on this one. We'll see how this works out.
All right.
We should segue maybe to some other new gaming things. I like to do some VR stuff. I still am in the mindset that mixed reality is the way of the future. I think this is going to be our significant computing experience in the next maybe 20 years. And the Facebook people are taking another stab at it. They're putting APIs in place for the Oculus Quest to do mixed reality pass-through. So the cameras that are on the Oculus Quest are not great for this experience. It has its purposes. So when I say it's not great, I wish I could find a picture in here. It doesn't have a photo of what this actually looks like, which would be very helpful. Let's see if I can find like a picture of what this actually does look like, so we can talk about it in a little more detail, because it's like dog vision basically. So it's like black and white. Here we go. This is a good shot of it. It's a black and white thing, and the elements inside can be colored, but the world around you that you're augmenting is going to be black and white. They are just IR sensors. They're not full color cameras in this version, right? So in future versions, this may be color, but for the time being, it's black and white. So it's got some potential uses. There are some cool things that you can do with it, but it's not something I don't see a lot of people spending a lot of time in. So you might have a feature where you jump into this mode and do something very quickly and jump back out, but I don't see you like running around in this mixed reality state for long. I think it'd be really hard on the eyes just with that black and white. It's a little bit fish-eyed, it's basically making a panoramic out of many cameras. It's kind of mushing that image together, so it's a little disorienting. But I am happy to see that they're adding it. This kind of paves the future for bigger things, and I think it's pretty cool.
All right.
John's like, no comment, get it off my face, I'm done.
Yep.
I don't want it. You're not convincing me.
Yeah. I'll wait.
All right. .NET Conf, focus on F#.
That's just a banner.
Oh, that's the banner.
The article.
My bad. Yeah, they got me.
That's okay.
At least they're advertising something of theirs. That's cool.
Yeah, that's right. So in .NET 6, we have source generators. We've talked about this in the past. They were introduced in .NET 5. But we have a new C# source generator for System.Text.Json. This actually effectively gets around the issue of serializing JSON without the need for reflection, which is awesome. Mm-hmm. So that can be a time-consuming process, especially for large documents. And so what they're saying here is that by using a source generator, they can actually mitigate the performance costs associated with serialization and reflection through this new source generator. And so they have this now available as part of .NET 6. And worth checking out.
Yeah, I mean, that could be a huge performance boon. I mean, it's not doing all of this serialization stuff at runtime. You're taking care of it ahead of time.
Yeah.
And it's probably a lot of boilerplate code you don't have to write anymore. So there's that, right?
Possibly, yeah, possibly.
I mean, there's already the paste from JSON in Visual Studio. That's pretty cool. I don't know if you've seen that one before, but
no.
There's you haven't seen that. Okay, so you could basically copy a block of JSON code, and then in Visual Studio you do edit paste as special, I think it is.
Oh yes, that's right.
There's a menu that's paste JSON
object.
as classes or something like that, and it actually creates the POCO objects for you, and they're pretty decent representation of what you need, and generally you can just click that and run. This sounds like something that you could have like a schema or something that you just update, and it constantly keeps those things in check. But then that kind of makes me wonder, like, how close do we start getting these HTTP services and JSON and the source generators to just being gRPC and the way all of that works with its definition files and the class generation
Well,
and all of that.
that one's interesting because there is a bit of a battle right now in terms of how we describe endpoints, and there's one side of the camp which is on the JSON and Open API side, and then there's another side of the camp which is on gRPC and protocol buffers, etc. on the other side. Where this all lands is anyone's guess. I think that we'll see kind of how this lays out, but for source generation, for utilization in the .NET context, this is a great evolution of what we have today. I think that source generators are going to be one of those things that continues to give back in terms of its innovation. I think they're a great addition to the framework, and certainly we're just now starting to realize what's possible with source generators. I think they're a great addition to the framework and to the runtime.
Yeah, they're really cool. I've played with them before. I'm looking forward to publishing one for Blazor and .NET 6. So I need to revisit that when the framework is getting ready to ship. And I should have a source generator for taking your CSS code, sniffing it for CSS breakpoints, and providing that as an API in your Blazor apps. So that should be pretty neat. So very, very niche use case, but I think it'll be a fun one. So we'll try that out and see how it works. Finally, best for last here. Somebody created. Oh, actually, Layla created this. I didn't realize this was Layla's project. I knew she was tweeting about it. I didn't realize it was hers. So hats off to Layla. Layla Porter. She's the amazing talent behind the Layla Codes It channel on Twitch. If you haven't seen that show, I suggest you watch it. It is fantastic, fun, lots of silliness, but lots of education as well. So she created this site called Womenofnet, and I think all you need to do is go on and create an account, and you can create a profile for yourself that talks a little bit about what you do, post some links to some of your resources, and just kind of share with the community that you're there. And other women of .NET can find you and add you to their social media networks. Maybe if you're a conference organizer, you can go here and help get your call for papers out to more women that are working in the .NET space. There's a lot of potential benefits here, so I think it's really cool. It's just started. I just saw her tweeting about it this morning. It looks like we only got a few profiles on here, but this could get really big, really fast, and be a great resource for the community, I think.
Cool. Awesome.
Very cool stuff. So that's womenofnet.net. So check that out. If you are a lady or identify as one, go create a profile on there so your peers can learn more about you.
This continues to haunt Microsoft, this naming of .NET, because this is women of .NET. That's essentially how it reads. But, I just wish they had just named it something different, like not .NET.
Verbalizing URLs is always going to be the bane of every podcast. So,
sure.
I've had this talk with our marketing folks like a bazillion times. We'll get a URL that's shortened, and it's like our progress URL shortener is like PROGS, or I can't ever remember what letters they took out to shorten word progress, but they've made it impossible to say. So you can't verbalize the shortened version, and then the links I always get are like something dash something dash something slash question mark hashtag some other 7 words hashtag together. Sure. And it's like, yeah, I can't read that on air, folks. We need a very short thing like Telerik UI / Blazor -UI. That's fine. I can handle that.
So you're saying a GUID isn't going to cut it? Perfect.
Yeah, you might as well give me like a boggle like situation where I'm trying to just form words out of letters, because it's always bad.
Duly noted.
But these .NET URLs are about the same.
Okay.
Anyway, we got off topic. This is a great resource. Again, Layla's amazing. Glad she was the one putting this together, and we'll follow up with it sometime to see how it's progressing.
So she's at VMware, by the looks of it. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. She just started with VMware.
Look, I'm old. I don't watch Twitch that much, so I'm gonna have to check this out. I don't know anything about this, so yeah.
Again, super fun show.
Sorry, I'm old. I'm old.
Super fun show to watch. Just a fun personality just to hang out with.
Cool.
So she's been a .NET developer for quite some time. Worked at Twilio. And recently went over to VMware as a developer advocate there. And this is looks like a side project she's been working on. I'm sure you can find out more about it on her stream.
Okay.
At Layla Codes It. So that's all we got for today, John.
Yes.
That is it for us.
Yeah.
So any parting words, my friend?
Get vaccinated. I just got my first shot. Feels like your older brother punched you in the arm for a bit, so that's good. Other than that, stay safe. Keep learning. Keep writing code. Keep contributing, etc., etc.
Yep, I've had the old stick in the arm as well. Doing good. No side effects either. Hopefully more people here get it as well. I don't know why it's even being debated, but we'll leave that up to the talking heads on the news at night. And just know that a lot of us that have it are perfectly fine and are safe with it. And, Curious Drive says, keep coding. I think I'll run with that mantra. And we don't have anybody to raid today. It's a pretty quiet afternoon on Twitch. So thank you all for joining us. And we will see you later this week. On Twitch, we've got the Blazor Power Hour. I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to talk about on there. I've got some really cool stuff I just discovered about CSS variables that I'm trying to use in some Blazor components. That makes for a fun show, but it kind of repeats a little bit of content we had before. But it's still a worthy topic, so I might just bring that up again. We've got React Wednesdays here. No VR this week. Instead, we have an Angular show coming up, and we have an all-day Angular walkabout. I think that's an Australian term.
It is
not, John?
Yeah, it's a term. It's basically like going for a really, really, really long hike. It's basically, but like for days and weeks, etc. So it's basically like going on an adventure in the Australian outback.
Yeah, so Alyssa is hosting that, and I'm trying to grab the actual date here. I'm trying to remember when that is. It did not come up on my calendar here. I'm trying to remember. But if you just hit follow and follow. You don't need to subscribe necessarily. Just follow the Code It Live channel, or find Alyssa Nicole on Twitter. Follow her there. She's hosting that, and she's going to have guests all day. I think it's 4 hours, but might as well be all day for me. She's July 29th. There we go. July 29th on Thursday. Yeah, she has a 4-hour segment with several guests to take you through becoming an Angular developer. And that should be extremely fun. There are prizes. So we always have cool stuff to give away, gift cards and whatnot, and Nintendo Switches and things. Maybe we'll give away one of those Steam-like things sometime. That would be a cool one for everybody to tell us they'd rather have a Switch. No, I'm just kidding. Poor Steam. I keep pooping on Steam. I love Steam.
Okay.
Anyway. Tune in. That's the idea.
All right.
Have a good week, folks. Take care, everyone.
See ya.